Hello, and welcome to the Chatterbox Letters podcast. I'm going to be reading my very large chatter-like letter to my listeners. The book, aka Chatter Letter, is called Holes. I hope you will enjoy as I read Holes in audio format. I will be reading chapter by chapter so it seems interesting as you are curious to know the whole story at its entirety. Introducing Holes by Louis Sachar. I will be reading chapter 24. Here it goes. Stanley was half asleep as he got in line for breakfast, but the sight of Mr. Sir awakened him. The left side of Mr. Sir's face had swollen to the size of cantaloupe. There were 3 dark purple jagged lines running down his cheek where the warden had scratched him. Wow, she scratched him. The other boys in Stanley's tent had obviously seen Mr. Sir as well as they had good sense not to say anything. Stanley put a carton of juice and a plastic spoon on his tray. He kept his eyes down and hardly breathed as Mr. Sir ladled some oatmeal-like stuff in his bowl. Oh, God, what did he put in his bowl? He brought his tray to the table. Behind him, a boy from one of the other tents said, "Hey, what happened to your face?" There was a crash. Stanley turned to see Mr. Sir holding the boy's head against the oatmeal pot. "Is something wrong with my face?" Wow. Holding his head on the oatmeal pot, trying to burn his face off. The boy tried to speak but couldn't. Mr. Sir had him by the throat. "Wow, he's violent. Does anyone see anything wrong with my face?" asked Mr. Sir as he continued to choke the boy. Wow. Nothing or nobody said anything. Mr. Sir let the boy go. His head banged against the table as he fell to the ground. Wow. Mr. Sir took over and asked, "How does your face look to you now?" A grueling sound came out of the boy's mouth. Then he managed to gasp the word, "Fine." "I'm kind of handsome, don't you think?" "Yes, Mr. Sir." Out on the lake, the other boys asked Stanley what he knew about Mr. Sir's face. But he just struggled and dug his hole. If he didn't talk back about it, maybe it would go away. He was trying to pace himself. He just wanted to get off the lake and away from Mr. Sir as soon as possible. Besides, he knew he'd get a break. "Whenever you're ready, just let me know," Zero had said. The first time the water truck came, it was driven by Mr. Padansky. The second time, Mr. Sir was driving. No one said anything except, "Thank you, Mr. Sir," as he filled the canteens, each of them. No one even dared to look at his grotesque face. Wow. As Stan waited, he ran his tongue over the roof of his mouth and inside his cheeks. His mouth was as dry as, turning the page, parched as the lake. The bright sun reflected off the side of the mirror of the truck, and Stanley had to shield his eyes with his hand. "Thank you, Mr. Sir," said Magnet, as he took his canteen from him. "Yeah, you thirsty, caveman?" Mr. Sir asked. "You, Mr. Sir?" "Yes," Stanley said, handing his canteen to him. Mr. Sir opened the nozzle, and the water flowed out of the tank, but it did not go into Stanley's canteen. Instead, it held the canteen right next to the stream of water. Stanley watched the water spatter on the dirt, where it was quickly absorbed by a thirsty ground. Mr. Sir let the water run for about 30 seconds, then stopped. "You want more?" he asked. Stanley didn't say anything. Mr. Sir turned the water back on, and again Stanley watched it pour onto the dirt. "There, that should be plenty." He handed Stanley his empty canteen. Stanley stared at the dark spot on the ground, which quickly shrank before his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Sir," he said. Wow, Mr. Sir was very brutal in this chapter. I have to say, he was very brutal in this chapter. Very rude and shrewd, I might say. All right, like, share, subscribe to my podcast. Hit that notification button to know once I go live. Ring that bell for updates on my podcast. If you have a chatter letter that you would like to have broadcast on my podcast, please send your letter to the Chatterbox Letters Podcast, Post Office Box 5556, Lakeland, Florida 33807. You can write whatever you want to write about in your chatter letter. Please keep it clean, your words clear and discreet. And I would like to say, please, everybody, don't hesitate to write a chatter letter and send one to me. Please let me get that first chatter letter from whoever writes that letter. Please, you always procrastinate, and send that letter today.